It's my utmost. You know, I took a look at this just to kind of see what was going to be said, and I don't really know what God may speak, whenever I come out to sit down and share, but it seems like all the devotionals always fit together with what's going on in my life, and that's why I shared it with you. And what fits for you in your life is how God works in having His Spirit arrange and confirm to you the fact that God is speaking to you through circumstances, that He wants to direct you in some way for you to understand that it is Him that is causing these things to happen, or to arrange them so that you would know Him in a better way. Having said all that, it's like I was dumbfounded yesterday, and I'm going to be challenged, I could see, throughout this week, or through this day especially, by one of the things that has frustrated me. And I know that sometimes I don't show much frustration here because I always look joyful, or I look sleepy-eyed, like rubbing my eyes, or just the reality of who I am in the Lord, And, I've been a Christian a long time, and, I get blessed, and I get excited, and I get, encouraged by people growing, and I get a, little fleck of self-examination in my eye, and then I take a look in the mirror of the Word, and I say, oh, look, Lord, I have a beam in my own eye that I need to remove so I can see clearly to remove the speck in my brother's eye. But having said all that, there's also the challenge that when you have wisdom from accumulated experience and knowledge, not just of Scripture and religion, but of dealing with and coming to the right conclusions through love and grace, to care about people enough to share facts that they can make determinations to go on with God rather than to be limited by someone else telling them they can't do something, then it gets to be a challenge for me, because I get aggravated when someone would stop someone else from experiencing the Lord in a full and complete way that they may want to go on with, or that somehow they limit God's ability to speak to a person, or they say that God can't do something, or they purposefully, for money's sake, deceive someone in some way that they get distracted from what God would have for them today, to know Him and to be prepared for what's coming in the future. And those things, as my wife knows, just tick me off. They aggravate me. They make me go to God in prayer. They make me say, God, let's do something about this. God, you got to do something, You can't save the world, but, the little part that you can do, God may ask you to, and you may see the big picture and think it's impossible. And then suddenly God says, watch this. And what little bit you can do might bring down an entire whole big army of things you thought couldn't be done by what He can do in you. Sublime intimacy. Said I not unto thee that if thou wouldst believe, thou shouldst see the glory of God? Every time you venture out in the life of faith, you will find something in your common sense circumstances that flatly contradicts your faith. Common sense is not faith. The natural and faith is not common sense. They stand in the relation of the natural and the spiritual. Can you trust Jesus Christ where your common sense says you cannot trust Him? Can you venture heroically on Jesus Christ's statements when the facts of your common sense life shout, it's a lie? Or is it a lie? On the Mount, it is easy to say, oh yes, Lord, I believe you, and I can do it. But you have to come down to the demon-possessed valley and meet with the facts that laugh ironically at the whole of your Mount of Transfiguration belief. I come across something that contradicts it. Let me say I believe God will supply all my need, and then let me run dry with no outlook and see whether I will go through the trial of faith or whether I will sink back to something lower. Faith must be tested because it can be turned into a personal possession only through conflict. What is your faith up against just now? The test will either prove that your faith is right, or it will kill it. Blessed is he whosoever shall not be offended in me. The final thing is confidence in Jesus. Believe steadfastly on him, and all you come up against will develop your faith. There is continual testing in the life of faith, and the last great test is death. May God keep us fighting trim. Faith is unutterable trust in God, and trust which never dreams that it will not stand by us. When you really trust God that way, you can say, and you should be developing in a personal way, a conversation with him, so you can ask him, God, what's going on? So you can put your trust in him. Because if you just put your trust in your own ideas, you'll find out pretty fast that they'll fail. But when God gives you something personally, real to you, like when you've been on the mountaintop and you talk to God and God says, okay, here's what I want you to do today. And you go, okay, and you go out and you, bam, run into some trial. That's not meant to stop you from doing what you're doing. It's meant to test you to see if you trust him, to come back to him and ask him, do you still want me to do it, or are you telling me something else? Because the reality of faith is just simply knowing who you know, that what he says he will do. And because he will accomplish it, what you choose to do is to walk the way he wants you to go, whether straight as an arrow, or whether to go in a winding way that you're going to learn circumstances, or whether you are able to handle the fact that God will say, I want you to walk on water. And then he bids you to come and follow him. And you walk out there and you step your foot on the water and fall through and get all wet. Been there, done that. So faith is not just a question of blindness, but rather faith is a trust in the person you know, and then a conversation you have with him as you grow in order to do what you know you should do, and you know you must do, and you know you have to do, because one day you will die, and one day you will look to your faith and say, either I know that I know that I know, or you're going to fear death. And in that moment, your faith is either complete in him, or it's devastated by the reality of the circumstances of your life. And the only way to prepare for that, literally, is day by day going through what God would bring you through today, which is a testing of your faith in whatever choices you've made today that you've said he is with you in. Because he's either with you in it, or you're really in it because he's not with you. Frankly, that's a scary place to be. I'd rather be with him and toss it to the wind and let him do his thing and say, God, I know you're with me. You told me this is your mess, you fix it. And then you can have joy. But if you're not with him, you're going to fight and resist and be frustrated and angry and mad and always try to work it out and beat someone to death with what you think you should do rather than what God said to do. The choice is yours. Ask him. It's that simple. Just ask him.